Where do usual Russians live in the big cities? How do their residences look like? What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in highly densely populated area? And a very important question, can these residences potentially become the death traps? Let's find out. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Konstantin and welcome to Letters to King. We're living in today's Russia explained by the insider you can trust. I own a few properties in Russia. A house, a townhouse and an apartment. Before moving to Russia, I lived in the United States, in Uzbekistan and in Ukraine. And I rented both houses and apartments. So I have pretty good experience and pretty good understanding of what it is to be living in a house in an apartment. I'd like to show you how Russians, regular Russian people, live in the cities and in the apartments, and how the apartment blocks or residences look like. Currently, we are residing in Moscow, the capital of Russia, in an apartment, which is quite large. Not large enough for a family of 5, a little boy and 2 girls, teenage girls, and me and my wife. But it's pretty decent size for Russian standards. It's about 100 square meters and 1,100 square feet. Prior to that, we lived in a large house in the south of Russia, and we made a conscious decision to move from a house to an apartment. In Russia, there are 18 cities with population over 1 million people. Quite a few small cities, an enormous quantity of land, small villages that are filled with houses. So around half of Russian population live in the big cities and half in the countryside. Most Russians in the cities live in apartments, in apartment complexes, or we call them apartment blocks. That's Soviet inheritance that we're left with, where people kind of had no choice, but they were just provided a living space, a tiny apartment by the government, according to a social contract. These days, the residences, apartment blocks are different. The new ones are much better than the older Soviet ones, but they're still apartment. It doesn't matter what angle you look at it, you still live surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of people. So we moved from a wonderful, beautiful house to an apartment. Why? There are a few reasons. There are actually quite a few reasons, but the 2 key ones are job and kids. We had to move to Moscow because of the job I took, and I have to be here. And if you live in Moscow, you kind of have no choice. You live in an apartment because in the city of Moscow, there are no houses. This is a very strange city. The very center of the city was built by the Tsar, of course, but today's Moscow, the current Moscow, was designed and built by Joseph Stalin and by the communists. So reason number 1, the job. Well, obviously, we had to live somewhere and move as a family. So we picked up a nice part of Moscow and an apartment. And the second reason is the kids. We wanted to change the environment for our kids. We were living in a house and our kids didn't have a lot of communications with neighbors. They didn't get to play with other kids because we simply didn't have any. We lived in a house surrounded by other houses. We rarely spoke to our neighbors. We never hang out with them. And it's kind of a secluded way of life. We used to drive our girls to school every morning, pick them up in the afternoon, and all the communication and play they got was with their classmates. And it was simply not enough. Then Michael was born, and he was little. We didn't have any playgrounds around us, nothing to entertain him with, no other kids, no other babies. So we decided to give an apartment a try, and this is why. So this is a typical apartment block or residence. It's fairly new, it's about 5 years old. And these 2 towers are absolutely brand new. They were just commissioned last year, and people are still moving in there. And look around. There is a huge set, a complex of apartment blocks over there. And we are surrounded by huge, humongous houses, apartments right here. All you can see, apartments and people. This is where I came from. More apartments. I call this the sea of apartments, the sea of people, and the sea of cars. Now, why would I do something like this? Why would I move from a house, a fantastic place where we live not surrounded by people, to an apartment in one of these huge towers and apartment blocks? Why? Well, let me show you why. This is a kindergarten for about 600 preschoolers. And this is another kindergarten for another 600 preschoolers. This is a school. Elementary, middle, and high school all at one. There's a large stadium. That's another school right there. Right behind the school, another kindergarten. There are 3 more kindergartens behind those apartment blocks, and there's a huge school for a couple thousand children behind those apartment blocks. There is so much for children here that we certainly couldn't find in a place where we lived previously in a nice house. Now, let's move to the playgrounds. This is not too far from the apartment where we live. Basically, this is our neighborhood. And check this out. Disregard this old dirt and trash. It's because snow is still melting. Usually, these places are fantastically clean. There's green grass and the trees. Just give it a few weeks. You see, this neighborhood is designed the way that the apartment blocks are at the perimeter of the huge, huge playgrounds. This place seems deserted without any kids because it's 7 in the morning, but wait for a couple hours and this area, this playground, will be full of kids and their parents. All kinds of swings, wooden houses, slides. This is where we do sledding in the winter when the snow falls and it's cold. The entire neighborhood, gets right here. Четвером. Давай, поехали. And kids started sledding, and they have so much fun. They just play with each other. I think I'm on the wrong spot. This is an ice skating rink in the winter. They make ice here, and it's right next door, and it's free for all. In the summertime, usually play football or basketball here. Then there is exercise equipment everywhere. People just get out and exercise in the morning. This place is for parkour. I'm not sure what the English word for this activity. Kids just, run and jump up and down of these things. This is another playground. It's absolutely awesome. love coming here when it's warm. Well, actually in the winter time, love coming here too and play. My son always has a ball playing here. I mean, you should see his face. He's so happy. There are, dozens, sometimes hundreds of other kids of his age playing here. And then he finds friends instantly, and he can spend here hours just running around with a ball, with a bicycle. It's very safe. There are no cars. There are never crimes here. There are always adults with kids. So this place is absolutely fantastic. So this was the second main reason why we chose this place to live. For the experience that our children would have. In the place where we lived previously, we would have to drive far and then pay to just bring a child to a place like this, to a playground, so he could play with other kids. Here it's just steps from our home. I myself was growing up in exactly same surrounding. We had very little to do in our houses, didn't have computers, iPads, internet, TV, nothing. So we would just get out and play from morning till night. I remember I started getting out on the street and playing by myself, unaccompanied by my parents, at first grade. I was 8 years old. It was Soviet Union, it was absolutely safe. No telephones, no cell phones. My parents wanted me to be home for lunch and for dinner, and that's it. And Michael, well, he's still too young to be left alone unaccompanied, but I always take him out here, and he has exactly same experience that I had when I was a kid. And this is priceless. And this is worth living in an apartment like we are right now. To summarize, there are two reasons why we have chose to move and relocate to this place, to an apartment. First, proximity to the job, to my office, and the second, the experience that our kids would get. You see, it's very convenient to live around here. You are in walking distance to everything you need. Stores, shopping centers, entertainment, official offices, anything you can think of. Schools, sports clubs for kids, things like this. You don't even have to have a car if you live here. I have perhaps 10 different food stores within 300 feet radius, literally within steps. If you look at the buildings, the first floors don't have apartments. They are all businesses. There are coffee shops, there are small cafes, there are pharmacies, and anything you can think of, you can buy right here in this one building. There is an internet store called Ozon, which is Russian Amazon. Pick up right here. So if I order something online, I don't have to go travel far. I just step out, get it, and come back home. Our son's daycare is right there. We can walk about half an hour, or we can drive for 5 minutes, and we will find ourselves in the middle of great forest. Another huge nature's playground. So I've been telling you about the advantages living in a place like this, but there are disadvantages as well. There are two major disadvantages the way I see them. The first is there are too many people around. In these apartment buildings around us, there are 50,000 people live. That's a lot. Me personally, I don't have a problem with that. I grew up in a large city of Rostov-on-Don in the middle of a city, so I'm a city boy. And the second problem, which bothers me, is parking. There are so many cars because most families have a car and some have two cars, and boy, it's hard to find a parking spot. But at the same time, we are world-class experts in parking in tight spots and maneuvering between tightly parked cars, We have some experience, every one of us who drives and live in this place. Everything was absolutely fine and we were happy until March of 2020, when the shit hit the fan. I realized that we got ourselves into a potential death trap. The coronavirus came, and the lockdown came, and the food shortages came, and that got me very, very concerned. Made it back home. Although it's not winter anymore, it's still kind of chilly outside. March 17th. I still remember the day, and I probably will remember it for good. I got into a food supermarket to find hordes of people buying everything they could buy that could last for some time. Pasta, porridges, oatmeals, canned meat, canned fish, everything that could be stored, they were just grabbing by carts. The coronavirus had just landed to Moscow. I made a video. Check it out. The link is right here. At the time, that was very disturbing. The next thing I did, I started grabbing food as well to create a supply that would last my family for at least 3 months. That's what I figured. I did that very quickly. But then it got me thinking, what if this lockdown lasts for a long time? What if a major blow happens to infrastructure of the city of Moscow, 20 plus million people? What if we all lose water supply? What if our elevators stop working and we don't have electricity? And this, at the time, seemed like a possibility. And you know what? It is still a possibility right now. What if 50,000 people that live in the buildings that I just showed you around go hungry? Most of them are families with children. What if their children start going hungry? What a parent whose child wants to eat would do. What would I do if my kids go hungry? These are very uncomfortable thoughts, and I don't even want to think about them. I realized that these buildings, very highly populated, very densely packed with people, they are potential death threats. With everything functioning normally, it is a joy to be living in this building. I just told you about it. Everything's convenient. You can go out and with your kids and play. He can ride bicycle. Fantastic place. But in case of a stinky substance hits the fan event, everything's gonna change. These places will certainly be the danger. People will go out and start doing crazy things to each other. Hunger drives people nuts. Thirst drives people nuts. Thank goodness I have another place I can move to and be in safety, well, at least in relative safety. How long does it take our family to pack and go? Well, I know because I've done that. I filmed in another video. It takes us 5 hours to pack everything and to leave this place in a rush for our second home in Rostov-on-Don in the south, where we have a large house surrounded by thick walls and safety. 5 hours and it's about 10-hour drive. Well, of course, driving there can be blocked by unexpected things, but from my understanding, the emergency situations don't happen like within hours, There's a certain lag of a few days, just like it was back a year ago in March of 2020. Putin and the mayor of Moscow announced the complete lockdown of Moscow, and it took them 2 weeks to lock it down because, it's just too complicated. So, apartments versus houses. Definitely safer to live in a house. Definitely more liberating as you have freedom of getting outside in your yard, breathing fresh air and things like that. Definitely gives you more safety. Apartments definitely are potential death traps. There is no question about that. For the past year, every time I get out of my apartment and I see tons of people, there's a picture in my head of March 2020 and all these people are in a local store cleaning out the food, we remain to be living here in Moscow because, it's a complicated decision. But we have a plan B, and we are about 13, 14 hours from finding ourselves in our second home in relative safety. My question of the day is it an apartment or a house for you? And why? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and I'll see you next time.